Okay, let's get started then. Thank you for being here today. On behalf of Smart Dolphins, I'd like to welcome you to today's session on cybersecurity for leaders and management. My name is Matthew, and I am the marketing coordinator here at Smart Dolphins. Before handing it over to our trainer, I'd like to quickly share some information on our upcoming public webinars. We have Microsoft Outlook Planner to do on December 5th. That's next week. We're doing Microsoft Bookings December 12th, and then we're taking a break for the holidays, and we'll have more events coming in November for you guys. Please visit our website for more information and to register. If you have any questions today, please pop them into the Q&A section here in Teams, and we'll tackle them as we go along. We'll also save some time at the end for discussion and Q&A. There's a handout located in the chat today. Please feel free to download that and follow along. I'd now like to introduce our trainer for today's presentation. It's an honor to introduce Sonia Goulet, President of Infinity Cyber. Sonia is an international cybersecurity educator, innovator, and strategist. She has dedicated her career to helping cybersecurity professionals detect and prevent cyber attacks in real-world settings. She is now focusing on educating employees on safe online business practices. Thank you for joining us today, Sonia. Please take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you taking time today to be here. I definitely am excited to share this material with you, and I really want it to be interactive. I want you to put some feedback inside of the chat box as well, and then we're going to ask you questions because we want to basically be able to figure out and support you and ask questions where you have the most need. We're going to cover what does cybersecurity mean to small businesses, small SMB, small medium businesses, and we're going to talk about getting started with security. We're going to talk about the basics of cybersecurity, and we're going to talk about the security culture and change management, and then some calls to action. So with that, I think we have a poll, and we'd like to ask you a couple questions about why you're here today. Go ahead, launch that poll. If you could fill those out, it would really be great so I can understand what you're here, what reason you're here for. And then I can speak a little bit more directly to that. I've been in cyber since 2008, and I've worked with like my main, when I started, I was working with the University of Michigan. I worked in Canada, and I just went to Michigan every month for a week. And during that time, I worked, our main partner was State of Michigan. And back then, our cybersecurity concerns were on a state level. So our state level concern was SCADA systems, infrastructure around utilities, and how to protect them. And so it was a matter of training all the personnel inside of the organization, making sure that they had the systems in place. And so, to be honest, coming forward to this day present, you can see that need hasn't changed. It's become even more elevated in terms of the concern for cybersecurity and protecting systems and SCADA systems and infrastructure. But now we're coming to another place where it's small organizations like yours that have the same concerns that a large organization and a federal agency would have as well. So they concern themselves about the infrastructure. However, they still had the concerns about their data, their people, and protecting their systems. So for you, I really am curious. So I'm just going to look and see if we have any feedback. So one of the question was, what's your main concern? And your 42% said protecting data, internal or client property properly. And then you're unsure, one person said you're unsure about how to implement new security policies. And then the other one was training staff on cybersecurity best practices, and then a cyber incident. So excellent. Thank you for your responses. I appreciate that. So when we're going to talk about what does security mean for business leaders today, I want to be able to put on a few lenses. And it's always important to have a few lenses. One is you're the leader, right? And you have to have this risk approach. You have to understand, okay, what's our risk here running our business, Where are our vulnerabilities? And then tackle that with that lens in mind. Now, as you can see this picture, it's kind of funny because some of you will look at that and go, yeah, I recognize that. That's how we got transported around in our family vehicle. No one had a seatbelt. Anyone could sit anywhere and you could jump around while the vehicle was moving because the parents didn't care because there was no laws in place and everything was fine. They didn't understand the risk. Fast forward to today, you know very well how much we've evolved. The stats have been very clear as to the risks of getting in a vehicle without a seatbelt, for example, and without a child seat, for another example. And then the laws have advanced and advanced and advanced, and our cars have advanced as well, so much so that we're safe physically inside these vehicles. So I want to be able to kind of compare that model towards our business. So we have worked in a model in our business where we've like offer a service, offer a product. We have our team that helps you deliver those services and products, whether your team is 5 people or whether it's 5,000 people. The whole idea is you're trying to offer a service with your clients and you're building that trust. Now, we're in a climate now where we no longer can get in a car and buckle up. Like we can't just get in there and not buckle up. We have to buckle up. But how do we buckle up in our business in this climate? What are we up against as a business? And I'm going to speak to you about your business model. And I want you to know that what you're facing, every type of organization and every sector is facing the exact same level of concern. So you're not alone. It isn't because, oh, you have 5 people and you don't have enough resources. You could run to a cybersecurity firm, any firm with over hundreds and hundreds of people, and they would still have the same going concern. But I want to be able to bring to your attention why these are happening. And so we want to talk about assessing the ongoing risk inside of your business and understanding how proactive you have to be. So there's 3 components, right? There's technology, there's processes, and then there's people. So it's not necessarily in that order, but processing your data is critical. But who processes that data? Your people. Who helps you use and process that data? Technology. And I would say on the front runner of all of our going concerns, it has to be the data, because that is what has to be protected. Knowing that the threat climate is what it is, we have heard enough in the news to know what that landscape is that's going to impact you. So we'll go a little bit through how that's kind of basically manifesting itself in the business landscape today. But what I want to know is, in today's market, everyone's crown jewels is your confidential data or your personal identifiable information. We call it PII. So that could be anything that you're handling, whether it's HR records, financial records, confidential data with your proprietary, software, whether you're, let's say you're building houses and you have designs, or whether you're a financial firm, whether you're a law firm. Everything around the way you're doing business, you're handling crown jewels, and many of your staff are handling those crown jewels. However, do you know where you're most vulnerable with the management of that data? Do you know that your staff know they're handling confidential data that's valuable? Now, that's where we're finding the miss. We're finding the miss where the staff are not aware they're handling critical confidential data, as we call them, crown jewels. 2, they don't know where they're saving them, storing them, or if they're following that properly according to the company's guidelines and policies. And that basically causes a concern, because that is where the vulnerability is in your organization, with the process, but it ties in your people and your technology. So we have to bring to attention a new level of accountability for us as leaders. How do we make this happen to move with the times, where we have technology that's running our business now in a way that we've never had before, and it's giving everyone the ease of access, but we don't have security top of mind. So we have laws that are in place now, and they're getting more and more stringent. So whether you're a financial firm, a law firm, or you're just running retail, you're still falling under many, many regulations that you have to adhere to, or you will fall under areas of possible litigation, civil lawsuits, because you're not protecting the data properly. So all of that to say, all of these laws put in place, whether it's credit card, it's called CPI, the credit card regulations, or privacy, which is really big and is coming front and center on laws changing and evolving so that we as companies take more responsibility of like how we're handling that data, how we're sharing that data, what do we can allow our consumers to consent to, and what are they opting out of. And it's so complicated and it's so layered and it is confusing. However, you have to, as a company, understand what you're adhering to and what you're lining up for. And with these privacy laws in BC or Alberta or the federal runs, PAPITA, you have to understand what they are. And you have to be able to understand whoever it is in your organization that can take the lead on that to be able to go, are we adhering to that? Do we understand what we have to follow? And what if we don't? That's really important for you to understand. Then your contractual obligations with your third-party vendors and your customers, you're building trust, but you also have compliance in there, right? You're accountable. And what are you accountable for? So you're using various different cloud services. It isn't just a flick of a switch, it's on. There's a lot of pieces around those SLAs and those agreements you're setting up with these partners, vendors. And so have you given much thought to that? To the level of where that your company data is going, how it's being transferred, how it's being shared. And then your due diligence, right? Everyone on your team has responsibility, and what are they responsible for? And it seems a bit overwhelming because you could look at that and from a 30,000 point view and go, where do we start? And we want to be able to kind of break that down to understand where you can start, even if it's small steps, because it has to be small steps to get somewhere. We know that building your security posture takes time. It isn't, within 3 months. And we know every organization is different, but we also know you can't do this alone. Between the technology that's required to run your business now, because we aren't running in paper and pen and we're not necessarily having, filing cabinets anymore. You might still use those, but that's not necessarily where you're saving your digital data and your PII or your confidential data, or even, working with them as an organization. Just Office 365 is a simple example where you're using SharePoint. You're putting a lot of confidential data in SharePoint. Whatever fields that you've created inside of SharePoint, whatever files, whatever access points for your staff, all of those are pieces around. That's a cloud service that your staff are all accessing, but who's accessing what and how are they sharing and how are they saving that? So when we look at common threats to small businesses, we know that there's business risks and we know there's business vulnerabilities. Like no company is ever secure, no company, and no software is ever secure. So we can't necessarily take full responsibility for every single thing that you're touching and putting in place inside your organization, but we can look at what we can take responsibility for and start moving the needle towards securing your organization to have a better security posture. And that is the goal. It will always be a continual move the needle, how long ever it takes, just starting with that, building it slowly but surely. Now, right now in the research, so for example, there's lots of cybersecurity reports coming out, kind of overviewing of the 2024 threat landscape, what's happening to business nowadays, where's the business vulnerability, where are the business risks, where are the threat actors, what are they doing, how are they doing it? And what we know is that there's over 100 ransomware gangs, operators we call them, active in the last year. 100. So you think Bonnie and Clyde times 100, right? So it's these digital criminals coming in at, like, there's 100 of them, and they're all specializing in different forms of conning and robbery, I'd call it, right? Social engineering, whatever you want, but they're basically criminals, and they're approaching it with a variety of stealth approaches that they're leveraged with money. They have lots of resources and expertise that you wouldn't have. So they don't sleep at night like we do. They don't shut the computer off at 5 like we do. And they have experts that are pulled together to be able to find our business vulnerabilities. And this is now what our business is at risk for, is it is now a line item that has to be part of your business. And that is cybersecurity. It is not a liability, it is a business need and a business unit now, because we would love to say that these criminals are going to go away and they're no longer going to be looking at your organization as a jackpot, you know, a bag of gold for them to be able to make money off. But that's unfortunately what we've seen, is they're not reducing in numbers, and they're not reducing in their type of attacks, and they're not reducing in the amount of money that they're stealing from us through the data that they're obtaining with unauthorized access. So I can tell you with 100% assurance that that is going to be there next year. So as we look into next year, we have to know that that's our threat landscape. And we know that they are continually stealing and compromising our credentials, that your staff credentials are stealing them one way or another, using sophisticated tools to be able to access the systems inside of your organization. So that authentication and that access, those permissions are being compromised within your own organization, just by the simple access point of passwords and usernames. Okay, so those most common today, and that was the same for last year, and I can't imagine it changing next year. It may reduce a little bit. It's slowly reducing a small percentage, but as you can see, 61% of small businesses were a victim of cyber attacks in 2023. So 61% is a high number. So, you know, we aren't talking about small numbers here that we as a small organization are up against. These are high numbers. So that means we have to pay attention to like what's happening to these small organizations. That means that could possibly happen to my organization. In the first half of 2024, in the US alone, FinCEN reported 4.91 million was the cost of breaches inside of the US alone. And that's reported, right? And now we're mandating reporting to be really stringent, and there's fines if there's not reporting done properly, lawsuits if they weren't done properly. So there's a lot of consequences to not following these particular reporting issues as well. So then that makes you accountable on another level, so that you're like, okay, I'm accountable for the data we handle. I'm accountable to the data we lose, and then we have to report if we do lose any of them as well. Now, your staff are hired to do their job, and they really are trying to do the best job they can do. However, they are also one of your weakest links. There's still a high percentage of 68% of incidences are caused by uninformed employees. So that's the DBR report from 2024. So we're still up against that issue. So we have to look at that with scrutiny and go, what can we change to increase the security in our company to help our team members do their job properly, but with security in mind? Because it's not an issue for them to do their accounting and payroll and invoicing. They know how to do that, experts in their field probably. But now with the lens of security, what does that require? What are they going to need to know? What should they do differently? What could be added to their workflow and their work process so that security is on the front end of it and continually through the process, so that it's done with a peace of mind, knowing, okay, we are thinking with security in mind, you know. And also when it comes to data, there's a methodology of privacy by design, where you start where you're building new programs, any services, you're building in privacy from the beginning, knowing we have data, we have to protect it. This is how we'll do it. We'll weave it inside of all of our processes so that there isn't a misstep for us to be vulnerable, and our risk would increase exponentially. So when we look at the stats, so we're looking at 43% of all attacks against small businesses, and they are including legal, insurance, retail, financial, healthcare, and they're not, you know, they all waver. It depends on who's the biggest criminal in the season. And I'll be honest with you, they really do vary every quarter. 141,000 is the average cost of downtime from a single attack. And you can say, if you ask yourself, what happens if we try to log into our systems tomorrow and we couldn't get in? That would be a day of no business. Then the next day, what if you couldn't log into your systems because you were locked out? What about day 3? What would you do? right? So when you have something like this happen, as in terms of a cyber incident, it unfortunately shuts down your whole business. That is the type of cyber instances that are occurring nowadays. They're shutting down your whole business. That's how much control they have. So 39% of small businesses lost customer data due to the cyber attack, due to a cyber attack. So you can say, can you afford to lose any of your data? It's a big question. It's an easy answer. So when you're looking at protecting data at front of mind in your business model, you can approach things a little differently, knowing that's your zeroing in on that focus. It can easily eliminate all the other noise, because there's a lot of noise in cybersecurity that you could get, a little bit muddled by, not sure what should you implement, what's priority, when, how, and that's where we want to be able to look at that for you today and go, if you zero in on that, you can understand that will help you know how to take next steps, knowing where you're vulnerable. Now, they are costly. Data breaches and cyber instances are costly. There's no question, right? And 42% don't have any plans in place to respond to a cyber attack. So same thing, if you didn't access your systems tomorrow, do you know what you would do? Do you know how you would navigate that? Do you even know what you would be up against? So London Drugs sure didn't. They had to shut their doors, all of their doors, for up to 10 days from their attack that started on April 28th. That's when they reported to shut the store down. And then May 7th, they opened them up again. So they had no choice but to shut their doors, and they couldn't resume services until they understood what happened and why it happened and what was compromised. Where were they vulnerable? And of course they brought in negotiators, they brought in federal authorities. Trust me, when they brought in a full suite of experts to be able to navigate this large cyber incident. And it caught a lot of our attention, because if you shopped at London Drugs, you obviously didn't get to shop at London Drugs for those certain amount of days. So that was a ransomware attack, kidnapped their data, shut down their systems. They were at the mercy. And so when we look at that, we know that 8% of organizations will pay the ransom to hackers to receive it. I mean, they will only, so there's a couple of things that happen here. So they will pay a ransom, but then only 8% will get all of their data back in return. So you can see it's a really bad return. Like, it's not worth paying these, Lockbit is who was part of this ransomware London Drugs breach. It's a ransomware gang that's sophisticated and has obliterated many companies. But they didn't negotiate with them. They said, we can't pay you 25 million, we'll pay you 8. And they said, nope, we're not going to. We're going to release the data we stole from you. So I want you to look at this data and just look at the files that they advertised and extorted London Drugs on and said that they had and stole and were going to post. So they had employee information and they had corporate files. So when you look at the employee information, just look at, do you handle any of this information in your organization? Yes, you handle emails with employees. Do you handle banking information? More than likely. Medical information? Depends about benefits, maybe. Or if you're a health care organization, most definitely. Emergency contacts. All the other parts of HR that are in there, behavioral performance, resignation letters, hiring letters. And then when you look at the corporate files, do you have any of those? Payroll information, supplier information, meeting minutes, billings, calendars, your calendars, letters, emails. That, more than likely, everyone in this session, you would have a few of these data points in your organization. So you are very similar to London Drugs, just on a different scale. You're collecting the same amount of data. And so then you have to ask yourself, can you afford for that getting exposed? Could you afford to that being sold? Can you afford for that to be not accessible? And can you afford to have your business shut down for days based on the goings-ons of these criminals dictating the way you're going to do a business? And I mean, I really unfortunately hate to say that, because that's what you're up against. When you look at an example that's so close to home, like London Drugs, you saw they were literally at the mercy of these criminals. So I would love to say this is, you know, a movie. It's not part of a movie. This is part of our day-to-day business life. So we have to look at how do we prevent as much as possible on the front end, right? So when we're looking at building security in our organization, I also love to follow Formula One. And when you look at the cars, how amazing they are, they can go over 250 miles per hour, and they can obviously, you know, turn corners like nobody's business. And then the drivers are elite athletes to be able to drive at that speed consistently for hours at a time. So all of that has evolved year over year as well. But our security landscape, our business landscape is also moving at such a pace I would compare to Formula One, where our technology is advancing. We're getting AI integrated into software. Like what's happening? Every software you open, there's an AI chat box and a tool that you can use, but can you use it? Is it secure? Then there's software that allows you to have such ease and access on every device, whether it's permitted by you or not, right? Like if it's a business device issued or if it's just a personal device. So the ease of access is incredible, right? So our technology is evolving, and I feel like I can barely keep up. But as a business leader, how are you going to keep up, right? So we have to increase our cyber hygiene. And with that, you have to go, what are our best practices that we have to follow when we're handling data, right? And utilizing information systems, right? As we talked about all the data that London Drugs was compromised with, you can also process what data you have as your crown jewels. Think about that, right? And then using collaboration software, we're finding that staff are sharing spreadsheets. They're sharing data points that are, you know, one staff to another, that they do not need to share the same data points. It's like we call it, you know, privileged access, where if I'm HR manager, I do not need to share it with a certain contractor who doesn't have anything to do with HR administration. And so that data point, those data points are really risky if you're sharing them just with an Excel spreadsheet over email, for example, or cloud services not securely backing them up and or encrypting them. So there's ways to share and store and transfer your data securely. Are you doing that, right? And so we really are looking at protecting the data, but it's what's in the data and who's seeing it and using it, because that's where those work processes can really, just missing the simple steps of those work processes can really put you at a level of risk that you would never, ever imagine. And then, you know, the cybersecurity governance and awareness and training. You know, you don't know what your staff don't know. And you have to give them a chance to have a voice to say, I don't understand, because we have lots. I work with lots of people who just keep saying, I don't have anything of value. I keep hearing this every day. It doesn't matter. I'm not necessarily a risk. I don't have anything anyone would want. That's not what this is about. But they think that. Your staff think that. So we need to put in policies, procedures, and guidance for staff so they understand it's not about you, it's about what you touch. It's what you have access to that could be manipulated and used for harm and used for other purposes. And that's where the data breach causes harm, and civil lawsuits can be drawn up in the millions because of the harm it caused, but the staff member doesn't know that, right? So they communicate those expectations so staff know what they're responsible for, but how they do it properly. And if they don't know, then they won't necessarily, you know, we can't blame them, but you also go, okay, how do I help them understand? And so we call it build a human firewall. So they know that they have to follow processes and not veer off processes. You know, verify these things where they're handling confidential data, invoices, payroll, staff, banking information, vendor information, and verifying there's a secure process in that. So they go, okay, I'm not going to miss a step no matter what vendor comes in and says, oh, sorry, can you pay this account instead? And your staff members go, okay, but not follow a process of verification and authorization to determine if that really is that vendor asking for that legitimate request. The thing of trust is what we're up against, because your staff want to trust everyone they're working with. That's what helps you build the services and products you have. But then the verification is missed there, even if someone injects from their process and they think, well, that's okay, I trust that vendor. It's like, no, the process has to be followed every single time, right? And then we have to reduce our password burden. So I'm not sure if you want to, Haley, do a poll. And here is a poll for you. So we have single sign-on. Obviously, that is a method that you can use with a technology provider like Smart Dolphins, and they can help you implement it so that it simplifies things for admin or using a password manager. But having a password policy so everyone understands what's required of them around passwords. It seems like a very simple thing to do, but you'd be surprised how much staff are very unfamiliar with how to navigate this. And I see it over and over again. So my question to you is, have you implemented a password policy in your company? And please let me know. It seems like one easy step to implement. It really can build a common conversation, level you up to get everyone on the same page. And then you find out who doesn't understand that and then who doesn't want to do it, right? Because there's people who don't want to do it. And there's a reason why they don't want to do it, because they're like, I want this one password and I want to use it on my Facebook account. I want to use it on my Office 365 account. I want to use it on my HR account. And I want to use it on my, like every Netflix account, every account, I want to use the same password. I see it over and over again. And it is because it's just too overwhelming to understand how to do it. Using an app of how to use a password manager is really tough. Changing passwords is really tough, but you as a leader could navigate that change by training them. So what I find is when I worked with a client and they were implementing a password manager, they were really smart people. But when I said, okay, so here's the tool, here's the step-by-step instructions, gave it to them, they needed another session just to walk through it again with me. So we spent 2 hours walking through and handling the questions. They're like, but what if? Oh, I can't do this. And the little snags that they ran up against were little, but that was enough for them to go, I don't know how to do it, so I'm not going to do it. I don't care. And it's not that they are not willing to, it's just that they get so frustrated because it's a little bit beyond their level and they think they have to be experts. So I found walking them through it, demoing it, showing them, nope, go here, click here. This is how you add a password. This is how you revise your password. This is how you change your password. And this is how you sync it with your browser or your phone or your app, and walking them through that, allowing every type of person, every type of learner to adapt to that change together, so that no one is left behind looking like, I don't understand it, so I can't ask, right? So that culture of talking about it. So the password policy statement, everyone said, so the answer was 33% said yes, 44% no, and then 22% said I don't know. So from this session, it'd be worth asking your teammates if you have one, because it would be worth digging through your paperwork to find out if it's in place and if it's updated. Now the next question is, do you have MFA enabled? So obviously every software that you use now has that security function. And so that helps reduce against phishing and reduces unauthorized access. So we look at it as a layered approach, right? Security is very layered. It's many steps, not time consuming by any means. I use a password manager every day, and it's just a few seconds to be able to use it to find the password to prompt inside of an account that I need to get to. Same with MFA. It is not time consuming. However, when you're finding you have these different type of learners in your team, you have to be able to go, what would be the barrier for usage for them, right? So my question for you is, if you have it enabled, and 40% said yes, 40% no, and two said, I don't know, like 20%, I said, I don't know. And that's, so again, another layered approach. When you're thinking about the most seamless ways of securing all the software you're using and all the people using the software, this is one way that is somewhat seamless, and it really does bridge the gap by having all of these like technology, people, and processes in place. And very little training is required. Adaptation takes a bit of time, but that could be built inside of your decision making of like, okay, we might need 3 months for this, and then to get everybody on board. But the idea is then you can go, okay, the most critical data, we are following the layers of security, implementing them with these, MFA in this software, and this software, and this software, this software. And again, you can do it in phases, whether you just bring in one team to debate it, another team, but the idea of across your organization, having this implemented and giving yourself a time frame where you go, this is one layer that's really important, and it can protect all our team because they're working remote or the office or both. You can have this implemented and it could really reduce the headache. Then you could know there's data, the best security practices for your people and for your organization, and you can know that they're following that, and you can put your mind at ease. And then we also have to look at third-party services. You have to review them. You have to understand the SLAs, but more importantly, you have to understand what you're accountable for. Security isn't always in these services being given to you and provided to you. Sharing too much data is also a problem, and that could make you liable as well. Collecting too much data. I'm a consumer too, and you would consider yourself, the way you look at it as business owner, you know you're a consumer as well. So I know that when I use apps, they're collecting my data. But now I'm starting to get a little bit fatigued by the data that's being collected. And if they're collecting too much, I get a little bit concerned by that as well. And there's laws in place that are pushing back so that we're not collecting too much data because we're getting greedy with data. So you have to know third parties are going to really, really try to collect as much data from your organization as possible. And you have to know, what are they collecting? Because you are liable for that. You are accountable if you're not aware, like they're taking that and using it for other purposes, not that you agree to. And so if you can look at it going, I'm going to add security to my business processes, you can see that with like what steps would need to be happening, right? So, I'm seeing things with clients where there's just access to documents that they shouldn't have access to. We call this privileged access management. So when you're looking at that, you have to understand least privilege is important. We call it zero trust is also, right? So I'm going to log into any system. I should be able to verify, like, should I be in that system? Like, I should only see what I'm allowed to access, right? SharePoint's really great for that. They give you access to those who need to see it, and then your other staff members won't see any of those files, right? Securely logging into any system should be part of the process, just like right now, this is how we do it, right? So who has access to this software? Shouldn't be everybody. Who's sharing passwords? Shouldn't be anybody, right? Are you allowing spreadsheets to be shared in the most insecure, vulnerable way through email or instant messaging? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's poor hygiene habits that are occurring in your organization right under your eyes. And so looking at that and building in processes that are security where, nope, we don't do that, we don't do that. And that's how you can, when someone mentioned earlier, how do you enforce these policies? You enforce them by doing the procedures, by saying, if you're going to handle an invoice, these are the steps that you follow each and every time to guarantee that we have the best security practices being followed when we're handling money. So the question, okay, so the question is still coming in, so I'm just going to give you a second for that and let you answer. And so Haley, Just want to understand this properly.
Yeah, so the question was, has your organization implemented any of the following? Check all that
Yeah.
apply. And then we
Okay.
have, 5 have password management, 7 have MFA, 2 have secure data saving practices, 4 have privileged access permissions set up for all staff, and 4 have cybersecurity onboarding training.
Excellent, excellent. That's excellent. So when you can see these are some key points, we want to be able to look at those and go, what can we as a company build on? And possibly if you implemented some of it, then go to the finish line on those ones, right? And then once you've gone to the finish line on them, so those who have implemented MFA across the board, you can now go, okay, that layer is done. What's the next priority for us? What can we do next? And only focus on that so that you're not burdened by all the aspects of cost, resources, time to be able to implement it. It's too overwhelming for an organization. And you can look at all of the requirements when you look at all of the federal authorities that are talking about this is how you implement security inside of your organization. They give you all the critical controls, and there's too many. So I'm telling you, finish one, commence another, and that way you will be building your security posture in a level that you can manage and not be overwhelmed. And then again, resources, you just don't have any, right? So you have to look at your security culture. You know that that's going to be one of your struggles because that, change is inevitable as we're experiencing it. We experience it personally, and now we're experiencing it professionally. And we know that this is tough. We have people that are in companies for a long time. They go, this is the way we've always done it. But we now can't have that mentality. But Dr. Spencer Johnson, who authored Who Moved My Cheese, he explains that you still have to accept the fact that change is hard regardless of what kind of change it is. So you have to look at that with that lens going, okay, I have this team and I have to accept that they're all going to approach this differently. So I have to give them the information they need for them to adapt and to be able to change and really evolve with the company as you're evolving. So never look at it like, because it's easy to misunderstand somebody bucking and pushing back against some of these new implementations. That is your sign that they just need more information. Always, always, always. They're not going to tell you because they don't know what information they need. They just know it's too difficult, or it's not clear enough, or it's a little bit hard, and you have to really, really go to their level and explain why. We found that if we explain the why to those staff members, they'll get on board. They need to know why every time, regardless of the change it is, they need to know why. If you can help build that inside of your messaging, you will have a lot more easier adaptation because they are willing to go, okay, yeah, that's important to the leadership because this, and this, okay, we'll do it. And they don't have to be scared. You don't have to say, oh, we're going to close shop if we have this happen. You can just say, this is important to our clients. We have clients we have to care about. We respect them. They expect us to protect their privacy. They expect us to provide them a service securely. We have to deliver that. We've spent years building that trust, years honing this service. We can't take it for granted by mishandling their private information and their data by not following processes inside our organization because we can't adapt to the changing landscape. We have to adapt. So my call to action for you would be understanding your training for your staff has to begin on day one. So any staff coming on, they should be trained within the first 30 days. What are the best practices? There's many free resources out there, including Smart Dolphins doing the monthly one. But also the idea of other resources, print or like digital newsletters, you name it, but whatever it is that you can provide for them to build their knowledge, they will be grateful for. A lot of staff don't get onboarded properly and they just get thrown in, and they can usually adapt. But around cybersecurity, that is not the case. You have to somewhat guide them. You have to tell them what your organization has priorities on so that they adhere to those. So you have to give that to them, whether it's just a couple pages or whether it's some hours of training that they follow and then they ask questions, but allow that to be the dialogues that they are open with and can discuss and understand. Then you have to think about the ideas. You can't do it alone. So you should bring in a security champion. Take somebody who is a great learner and curious and really has a passion for your company and your clients, and ask them to take this on to say, help us. Can you take this on to help us build this security policy, change this policy, help everybody have conversations around this at the team meeting, bringing up topics that could be a conversation starter at team meetings. Then also, you know that it will have to start with you. So maybe you will say in team meetings, we are now going to have security as a line item in our team meetings, and this is what we're going to have a different topic every month, whatever it takes, but just knowing that it has to come from you so they understand, oh, it's a priority. So they'll respect that, leadership top-down kind of model. And then when you're looking at your security posture, you're building in small steps. So you're going to enhance your data management process, because that is the PII is vulnerable whatever stage it's at, whether it's in handling, storage, or transferring. Right? So can you encrypt it? How long are you keeping your data for? Do you understand how long you're keeping your data for? Are you keeping too much data? These are big questions and they're quite a heavy burden, but as a responsible organization, you have to know, right? So if you have a client, let's say I invest my money with Fidelity, and then I pull out my money with Fidelity and I no longer have an account with Fidelity, my investments were pulled out. They should no longer have information on me. They should no longer, I've closed my account. So if they keep it, why are they keeping it? So I have every right to ask them, can you please remove my information? But me as a consumer, I'm not thinking about it too much because I think, well, I've closed my account. So, there's due diligence there of like, okay, how long are you keeping data for and for what purpose? You don't want to keep too much data either. It's just too risky. So you need to really figure out how you have that, data minimization in place. And then conducting a yearly gap assessment, however that is with whomever you choose, but knowing you have to know where your vulnerabilities are. You have to know where your risks are. There's no way that you get into your car and you put on blindfolds and then start driving. Like you get in a car, and we know how to assess our physical risks every day when we get in a vehicle. We know we can't take our hand off the steering wheel when we go down the highway, right? This is the same way you're running your business. You have to go, what are my risks this year? I need somebody that's a professional to be able to do this for us. And the cost in that is your business cybersecurity line item that you're going to go, it's okay because it's a critical business unit now. And this is a cost we do have to include because this is the way we have to run our business. And then enforce these policies, right? So however you obviously don't have to start with 10 policies. You can start with what's the most crucial policies. Start with one, have procedures, train on them, talk about them at team meetings, build on another, get everyone to sign off, but enforce them so that everyone talks about it and encourages that mindset so that they know that this is the way the reason you do it, the why you do it, and then they follow through on that. So it is an ongoing business need. There is no question. What I'm sharing with you today, I can tell you, bet you in 6 months, some of that's going to evolve, especially with AI coming in just like an absolute just storm. It's going to be really changing our landscape, and we have to adapt. We are going to use AI, but how are we going to use it? So we have to have that in our lens as well. But regardless, your technology that you're using is not going to be your answer to every problem inside of cybersecurity. And that's what these hackers are relying on, is they go, well, we can easily find vulnerabilities in your software and your technology, but we find it easier with your people. So we will compromise your organization any which way is the easiest, right? So you have to know so layered, but it's not one and done. So that's why if you continually just build on your posture, knowing this is the long game, it's going to take years to do, then you will get there, and just know that you're doing your best. Because again, like I said, you're not going to be 100% secure, and you can only do what you can do with the resources you have. So just manage it like another business concern, knowing that you're thinking about risk first and vulnerability, but your overarching goal and objective is to protect that data, and everyone on your team and teams look at that with the same lens, going, what am I handling? Am I handling this private information properly? So get them to ask questions. What's the worst that could happen if I don't handle this data properly? It's worth asking themselves, am I doing this properly? That this could put my organization at risk, right? So that accountability is on everyone's responsibility. So that is what I wanted to share with you today, and I would love to be able to see if there's any questions that I can answer from today. Any clarification you might need on any of these things as well. Because I did cover a bit there, and I didn't necessarily go into too deep of a explanation of privilege access management. But if you need more information about that, happy to discuss that, because that's really important as well. Yeah, can you pause the recording, please? And then, yeah, we can talk openly.